My girlfriend got roped and wanted to keep the baby. I couldn't understand why, but then the disgusting truth behind her reasoning was revealed. My girlfriend Sarah was my world, but after she got roped at the party I wanted her not to go to, everything changed. She decided to keep the baby and called it a blessing in disguise the first time she told me she was pregnant. I simply couldn't see it that way. Every time I looked at her, I saw what he had done to her. I felt guilty for even considering leaving, but I didn't feel comfortable raising a kid that wasn't mine. I loved Sarah, but it just felt like too much to bear. I drove over to my friend Ryan's house. I asked him what he thought about it and what he would do in that situation. He joked and said, if I were Sarah, or if I were you. I didn't even know why I came over here, knowing that Ryan makes everything a joke. After I told him seriously how I felt, he said that it was up to me, and that if I felt like it was too much to handle, then to leave. He said he wouldn't stay, but he said I should make the decision based on our relationship. I agreed, and left his house feeling conflicted. I left with more questions than I had before I went. On the car ride home, I called up my other friend that I met in our frat in college. I broke down the entire situation for Jason, and since we weren't as close as we were before, I told him it was a hypothetical situation. I think he figured out soon enough it was my reality. He told me that he would stay if he loved Sarah, because she would already have to deal with the aftermath of being roped, and I didn't want to add more damage to the healing process. He said he would stay for the sake of the baby as well, since kids that grow up without fathers tend to be less successful in life. I forgot that Jason was pro-life, but I just desperately needed some sort of validation from someone. By the time we said our goodbyes, I was pulling back into my driveway. I knew after talking to my friends that I would have to come to this decision on my own. I walked inside the house and asked Sarah if she had the time to talk. After she agreed, I told her my feelings and how I felt about the whole situation. I told her how sorry I was that she was experiencing this, and how torn she must feel about her trauma and the aftermath. Sarah had grown up in a religious household. Her family would go to Mass at the Catholic Church 3 days a week. I knew what I was getting into when I decided to be with her, so asking her if she would be open to terminating the pregnancy would be like pulling teeth. After I proposed a termination of pregnancy, she looked at me as if I had asked her to throw puppies into the fireplace. She then told me that I already knew the answer to that question. I then tried to tell her that I didn't feel comfortable raising a kid that was not mine, and how it could affect our relationship if she kept the child. She told me that if I had a problem with raising the kid, then I wouldn't be the one for her. She called me selfish for wanting to leave after knowing what she's been through. I told her that I would try my best to help her with starting therapy and healing from the incident, but a kid would change the entire dynamic of our relationship. She said she was done with this conversation and stormed off into the bedroom. I sat there feeling defeated and not knowing where to go from there. I truly loved Sarah and wanted the best for her, but I was torn because I didn't want to stay somewhere where I knew I would be unhappy for the rest of my life. I didn't think I could handle the weight of the resentment. The weeks that followed were an emotional roller coaster. Me and Sarah would have amazing days. We would go on dates to our favorite spots, then come home and enjoy one another. Then after a while, Sarah would say something about the baby, or speak about how she's gonna miss times like this after the baby is born, and it would cause us to go through the same argument that we had the first night. I'd tell her that she wouldn't have to miss those times because we could just get rid of the baby. Then she'd tell me that I was being selfish again, and to just let her have this one thing, and it would always end the same way. Sarah was keeping the baby, and there was nothing I could do about it. After a few days, she would think that I had forgotten the argument, or think that I agreed to be with her since I didn't treat her differently, and things would go back to normal until again, she'd bring up something about the baby, and we'd have that same back and forth disagreement. I just couldn't understand why Sarah, who was 19 at the time, would want to keep this baby. Babies are crazy expensive. We were both in college at the time and had enough loans as it was. A baby would only put us in more debt. I understood the religious aspect of it, but she never seemed that interested in having any kids when we met. What changed? I went to bed that night, laid down in my dark bedroom, and began thinking. I needed to know what changed in Sarah and how we could move past it, or if we could. I decided the next day to go through Sarah's phone. I know it's not the best thing that I could have done, but talking to her about the baby only ended in arguments. I needed to know why she wanted to keep the baby so bad. I saw her text messages with her friend Bridget. There all I saw was a bunch of cat memes and the occasional girl talk about Bridget's dating life. They didn't speak much about the baby. Then I went through the rest of her most recents. They were mainly text messages from Victoria's Secret or Bath and Body Works with coupons. I felt hopeless until I stumbled across the conversation she had with her parents. I opened the group chat and see text messages from her mom the night after the incident. Her mom texted her that she wouldn't have got roped if she wasn't always showing her belly button piercing, and how she told her that she always wanted to go party with her friends, and look at where it got her. This text was as long as the phone screen. She went on to say that she shouldn't be wearing the makeup she does, and how she's always attracted attention from men since a young age, hence why the priest at their old church had to step down. She blamed her for looking too pretty, and that she tried to warn her about her promiscuous ways. Later in the text, she told her that she'd better keep it if she wanted to make it to heaven. She said that she did enough by acting like a Jezebel, and that the kid would help her slow down. She ended the hate-filled text by telling her that everything that happened to her, she deserved it. Sarah's reply wasn't there because I assumed she called her mom or talked to her in person. I checked her call log, and sure enough, 8 minutes after receiving the text message to the group chat with Sarah and her parents. Sarah had called her mom. At that moment, Sarah had walked into the kitchen where I was reading her phone. I swiped out of the messages and closed the app. Then I locked her phone and threw it down on the kitchen table with a quickness. Without being able to process what I read, I had to collect myself fast. I greet Sarah with a hug and a kiss. I could only imagine the heartache she had been through. I asked her how she was doing, trying to be as compassionate as possible.